We'd like to, at this time, welcome our sponsor. Salt River Project has helped shape the West since its founding in 1903. That was the year I was born. And their history is one of service, it's sad as people believe that, to the residents of Arizona. SRP consists of two entities that operate jointly, the Salt River Valley Water Users Association, water provider, and the Salt River Project Agricultural Improvement and Power District electrical provider. That's a mouthful. Joining us today from SRP is Director of Water Supply, Mr. Bruce Hallin. Bruce, welcome to Mesa Morning Live, and thanks for being our sponsor.
Good afternoon, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here. And let me just reach out to Jeff. That was wonderful, Jeff. Great job. Very, very nice. That's going to be tough for me to follow, but I'll allow you to hopefully liven this up because I'm just a water guy.
Hey, Jeff, are you a customer of SRP?
What am I? Yeah, I am SRP. Yeah.
Okay, maybe you guys can talk afterwards. Do a little
Can
trade
I get
out.
a discount or no?
We'll sing for water. It's a whole thing we can work on.
Sounds like a good deal to save a little money.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm thinking.
That's the best commodity on the planet. Water.
Yeah, exactly. Water in the desert. You're in the right business, Bruce. Before we get into things, Bruce, we've heard from our friend Janine at SRP that SRP's workforce is comprised of 10% veterans, active guards, and reservists. Thank you for supporting our vets. We all appreciate that. Is that kind of in the mission statement of SRP?
Salt River Project with our veterans, we offered several different programs, and we have, as Janine mentioned, about 10% of our workforce, but we have programs such as an initiative to provide jobs for service members and veterans. And what we do is that we offer like a special website which uses job skill translator that enables the veterans to figure out how their education and their experience in the military can apply to jobs at SRP. And then we have an employee interest group that is made up of veterans so that veterans have an opportunity to interface with SRP leadership, have an opportunity to have some funding opportunities with other groups outside of SRP. And so SRP is very, very proud to support our veterans and recognize their service to our country. So we're very happy to have veterans as members of the Salt River Project family.
That's great. Well, I'm going to ask a question that people always ask me. I travel around the country, and when people find out you're from the Phoenix area, they always say, where do you get your water out there? Is there enough water? And I always, of course, because I'm tired of traffic, I tell them, oh no, we're almost out. If you come, bring a canteen. But for those of us that actually do live here, tell us about where do we get our water, and please tell us we have enough.
Phoenix has done, the Phoenix metropolitan area and a wide variety of agencies, including Salt River Project, have done a lot of planning over the last 100+ years to ensure that we have a long-term reliable water supply. What's unique about Phoenix and where it's much different than many other areas of the country is that we always plan for drought. And so when you're planning for drought, you're always thinking in terms of, I got to have enough supply for that next dry period. It's not the wet periods that we're worried about. We're worried about, do we have enough storage in place so that we can ensure that we have water supply over these dry periods? And so you've seen significant investment in infrastructure. You have the Salt River Project, and Salt River Project's all in-state water supplies. So we have the watersheds of the Salt and Verde rivers, 7 reservoirs, which make up a little over, not that this means anything to anybody, but it's about 2.3 million acre feet of storage on that system. And then we've developed a fairly robust groundwater system that helps augment the surface water during those dry periods. And then we have the CAP that comes to the valley. And so, the city of Mesa has access to Colorado River water supplies, Salt River Project water supplies. We reuse most of our effluent or reclaimed water. The nation's largest nuclear power plant in the country is reliant solely on reclaimed water, and that's Palo Verde Nuclear Generating Station. The city of Mesa is storing water underground, building additional reservoirs underground. They're storing highly treated reclaimed water so that they can pull that water out during those dry periods. So overall, the Phoenix area, I would argue with anyone that the city of Phoenix metropolitan area is more positioned when it comes to a robust long-term water supply, the most any other city within the southwestern United States.
Well, that's awesome because the growth is amazingly just keeps on booming. And so you just think, I hope we're staying on pace with water. It's very impressive. And Jeff, I'm sure when you're flying around to see all the canals, you know, the amount of planning that went into bringing us water is pretty mind-boggling. But tell us a little bit about, you mentioned that you kind of planned for the drought. So you get, like this weekend, we're supposed to get rain. That's an exciting day for you, right? That's good.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. We have a couple of meteorologists and they get all excited because we only get about, a half dozen big major precip events a year. And so they're all excited. But, it's all about snowfall, snow melt, and rainfall on the watersheds that we really depend on to fill those reservoirs. And so most people don't understand that it's really not rain that occurs in the Phoenix metropolitan area, but it's this precip and the snowfall that we see in the Flagstaff area and we see in the White Mountains. All of that accumulates and runs off into our watershed, and then we store it behind our reservoirs. Now, I did give us a very glowing, remarks about existing water supplies for a lot of our existing large water providers, including the city of Mesa. But there are areas outside of the metropolitan area that weren't part of that original planning where we're looking at maybe some challenges associated with long-term reliable water supplies. So we have regulations in place that really limit what you can and can't do when it comes to growth. And we have assured water supply requirements for that growth. And so Salt River Project here recently has been evaluating a couple of infrastructure opportunities where we're running into some issues associated with sedimentation in our reservoirs. And this is kind of a unique situation, but you see this throughout the western United States. Those reservoirs are at the end of a very, very large watershed. And when you get these major flood events, we try to capture that water. Well, in that water is a lot of sediment, and that sediment settles out in these reservoirs. So at Horseshoe Reservoir, which is on the Verde system, we've lost about a third of the capacity at Horseshoe due to sedimentation. So the last thing you want to do when it comes to managing water in the desert is to reduce your ability to store water for these dry periods. And so we've initiated a study on how can we replace that sediment and ensure that we continue to store the amount of water that we need to provide water to our customers and our shareholders. Well, one of the options is actually to increase the height at Bartlett Reservoir. So the thought is we'll go to Bartlett, we'll increase the height of Bartlett Reservoir, move the capacity from Horseshoe down to Bartlett. But by doing that, we also believe that there may be an opportunity to store even more water. So that means more surface water for some of these areas that are on the outskirts of the Phoenix metropolitan area that are looking for renewable water supplies and they're not depending on groundwater. And so that's a big project for us. That's something new. We're going through, this is really being led by the federal government since our assets are owned by the Bureau of Reclamation. So that's something that you're probably going to hear about, and others are going to hear about. The city of Mesa is participating. The city of Mesa may have some interest in some of the storage capacity, but they don't want to see a reduction in the reliability of the water supply there at Bartlett. So that's one project that we're working on to, secure the reliability of that water supply, look into the future, looking for future potential, make sure that we have some water for future growth. And then we're looking at maybe storing some additional water behind Roosevelt Dam. We have a lot of flood control space back there. So we might try to store some additional water behind Roosevelt and then use that water supply for others.
That's awesome. Well, okay, talk to us a little bit about climate change. That's, I know that's front of mind for everybody, especially in this political season. Everybody wants to know how that's going to affect us. What do you see down on the horizon for that?
For SRP, I think you get a lot of questions about this past summer. This past summer was unbearable. It was hot. And it wasn't that we just broke a few temperature records. We shattered those records. And so I've had a lot of people have came up to me and asked the question, well, is that climate change? And my answer is yes and no. Yes, from the perspective we are anticipating temperatures to increase. No, from the perspective of the situation that we experienced this past summer is not indicative of what the scientists are telling us what's going to happen with the weather pattern. What happened this past summer was something that was extremely unique and really is not indicative of what we believe will actually be climate change. Now, with that, I guess to talk about climate change, and most people are curious about what will it mean to our water supply. Within our watershed, what's interesting about SRP, it's somewhat different, or the SRP watersheds or the watersheds of Arizona, is that we anticipate some reduction potentially in runoff. We expect it to be a bit warmer. But what happens in our watershed is that we see like snowpack build up and then it melts off during the winter. We'll get a rainstorm and we'll store that water within our reservoirs. And so it's a much different type of hydrology system where we don't anticipate a lot of impact when it comes to the overall runoff into their system. But what we are seeing is variability, which means you're going to have higher highs and lower lows. We're going to have significant events where you want to store as much water as you can. And then we believe that we're going to go into events where it's going to be extremely dry. Versus you look at California, you look at Colorado, much different situation in their watersheds. They build up these large snowpacks, and then their expectation is that snowpack's going to melt off in the late spring and the early summer very, very slowly. Well, they're seeing increases in temperature, which means there's a lot more evapotranspiration, there's a lot more evaporation. So you're not seeing the same amount of runoff coming off on those systems. So their hydrology is much different than here in Arizona.
Wow. I somehow feel a little smarter after talking to you.
Those are some big words there.
Hopefully I wasn't too boring or too technical.
No, I love it. Hey, and by the way, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but in the interest of global warming or climate change, I've tried to do my part. I've taken my in-ground pool out of my backyard. I am fracking, and I'm putting in a golf course. But I think the net benefit will be a plus.
Using reclaimed water.
Using reclaimed water, yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Hey, I'm a part-time and soon-to-be full-time resident of the White Mountains, and the big fear up there is these catastrophic forest fires. Is there anything that we can, what do we do? Help us, Bruce.
This is a major issue across the western United States, and it's really a combination of issues that we're dealing with. It's warmer, it's drier, and we haven't done a very good job of managing these forests. Most of the forests in Arizona are federal lands. So, when you look at those forested lands, most of it is federal lands, National Forest Service lands. What we need the public to understand is that this is going to be a huge problem, and we need to recreate a forest products industry to come in and remove this material. Now, we're not talking going in and essentially, cutting all the material, cutting all the large trees. We have an overabundance of trees where, historically, a healthy forest and a healthy watershed might have 20 to 50 trees per acre. We see some areas where we have over 1,000 trees per acre. And so we need to get in and thin those trees, thin those forests, because fire is a normal occurrence in these forests in the Southwest. But unfortunately, we have so much doggone fuel load that you cannot fight a fire, and they become catastrophic and they destroy everything. So whether it's, fisheries, whether it's your recreational benefits that you enjoy in the forests, endangered species, communities, and from our perspective, water and watersheds and the water supply, because all that material following a fire is going to end up into your water supply. And so we've been working with the federal government. We're looking to our customers. We're looking to the private sector. We're all going to have to invest in restoration. We're all going to have to work with industry to make sure that we can get in and thin these forests as quickly as possible. We're working with the Forest Service right now on an RFP up close to 1 million acres to be thinned over the next 20 years. We're hoping that we can start that within the next couple of years, get industry in place, build a couple of large sawmills and start getting in there and cutting wood. A lot of this wood is not very valuable wood, so it's going to take some commitment from the private sector and others to make it happen. But, the costs associated with catastrophic wildfire, the post costs associated with that are much, much higher than us investing in these forests today. So unfortunately, it's something that's occurring throughout the western United States, and Arizona has the exact same challenge.
Yeah. Well, real quick, because I know we're running late on time and I've kept you longer than you expected, but We, a few years ago, ASU had a grant where they would do a matching fund, and we had the Forest Service come in and do our little chunk of dirt. They cut down 2,200 trees out of 4 acres. And,
Excellent.
and you can't even tell it's
Wow.
been thinned out. It looks great.
Yeah.
And the trees that they left are healthier. They're getting more sunlight, more water. So you're preaching to the choir, Bruce. Thank you so
Excellent.
much for being here, taking time out of your day. And thanks for all you do. You're a service-oriented business, and we appreciate it. And thanks for all you do for the veterans.
Thank you very much, Mark. I appreciate it and appreciate the opportunity and the partnership with the City of Mesa and all your citizens. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's Mr. Bruce Hallin from SRP. Thank you, sir.